Ah, good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm not close enough to Pete Hedges' makeup room to get cleaned up or even shaved today. We're out at the Chilliwack Hope boundary, and it's 8:30 in the morning our time. Now, I just was helping an American visitor with directions on how he needs to proceed if he's going to get all his way up to Fairbanks, Alaska. The weird thing about this visitor is that he is definitely a Maga. Now, obviously, he didn't know who he was talking to, otherwise, he probably wouldn't have spoken to me. But, anyways, I gave him directions and wished him a good day. In the interim, we had several bizarre conversations, uh, and it taught me one thing that they really do not have any connection to reality or fact. It's like they live in a delusional world where the United States has everything perfect when absolutely none of it is working correctly anymore. So let's talk about some of the points. So first off, he made the point that you can't hunt or do anything. You can't even own a gun here in Canada. The truth is, and this is easy to look up, there are more long arms per capita in Canada than the United States. There just are. We are still mainly a rural society. As a result, per capita, there are more licensed hunters. Why? Well, because our we're only just over 40 million people. We have the second largest landmass on the planet, and that means you're a huge amount of wildlife: deer, moose, all sorts of birds. Um, Fishing is really big still too. Problem is, they actually believe that we just sit around all day doing nothing up here, and the government just does things for us. I made the logical point that really you guys do deserve in the United States universal health care. How can every other society pay for it, but they can't? At which point he went absolutely crazy. Apparently, his wife apparently works in healthcare, and although there's no real evidence for anything he's about to suggest, I'm going to pass this conversation on regardless. She works in oncology. Apparently, it's neurological oncology, which is fine. It's a very specialized niche, and BC really only has two centers that can probably support that type of work. As a result, the BC government does often pay for trips to Ontario or trips south of the border to treat. Apparently, in this case, his wife says that there's all sorts of Canadians who are going down there for treatment. Oh, there, Rose just came back from the river. Rosie nosy. Anyways, so as a result, he says, well, there was an 8-month wait for this one girl, and that's why she was down at the clinic. Well, okay, so there's an 8-month wait, and they decided that to prioritize her care, they would pay for her going to the clinic down there, which is awesome. I mean, that's part of what it means when we have universal health care. It means the patient still isn't paying for it, but that she received a letter suggesting she just take MAID and have herself killed. Okay, first off, the government of Canada does not send letters to anybody at any time suggesting they should have MAID. If there's a private oncologist who believes that she's at stage 4 and probably shouldn't consider this rather than painful treatment, he would have that conversation directly with her, discussing how painful the treatment is or the lack of success rate or whatever. I don't know particularly if this patient actually existed or was just a figment of his imagination or any of that because I have no concept. No, governments do not send letters to Canadians suggesting they kill themselves. First off, the federal government has no control over healthcare issues other than paying the bills. And the provincial government has strict mandates around that so that that's not something that any provincial agency would do. However, and he actually believes there are literally thousands of Canadians who get letters from the government suggesting they kill themselves is false. And it's really easy to just use Snoops and just check that out because it's quite easily debunked. Then he went on about how the oil refineries in California had to close because they just wouldn't. They thought the the government was going to stomp all over them. Again, there's another falsehood. The oil refineries in California closed because they could not afford to upgrade to modern standards. If you can't afford to do it, then there's no business logic to trying. Makes sense that those facilities would then close. Regardless, because Oregon and Washington share the one refinery, he was from Oregon. He's on his way to Anchorage. No, Fairbanks, sorry. Um, that's absolutely zero reason for that. I mean, even if you were still getting it from a different state, because California was able to make their own, continue to produce enough gasoline for their own citizens. Again, then his thought that, oh, well, they're not producing enough is also false. Canada actually imports gasoline from the same refinery that does Oregon and Seattle and Washington State, because southern BC is closer to that than they are to a refinery in Alberta, let's say. And there are no refineries, though there's one small refinery in BC, and it nowhere near produces enough gasoline to cover the whole province. So most of the fuel that's being burnt in southern BC is coming out of the same refinery that he's complaining about. Then we got onto the forest fires, because of course there's a lot of forest fires in Canada right now, where he obviously has no concept of dimensions or size. He is about to spend 3 days traveling across one province from from south to north, without realizing that there are 7 more that you can't traverse in one day, and actually 8 if you count Labrador, because you have to take that boat back and forth from Newfoundland. But that's a totally different story. That's just a matter of transportation. Um, so, and in total, we're sparsely populated. There's just over 40 million of us. The first largest nation on the world, which of course is Russia by landmass, has more than 100 million more people in it. So the idea that we can go around, and I don't know what he expects us to do. I mean, really, honestly, it's a huge country. There is no way that we would go in and start doing burns in non-inhabitable areas or non-habited areas. It's just ridiculous. Yes, I agree. The province of BC should not have curtailed in and around areas that are heavily populated their no burn policy, and really does need to revisit forest management. However, and this is a very big however, there actually is global warming in the world. Of course, he actually doesn't seem to believe in global warming. He actually thinks that it's our fault that the fires are happening because we're not doing enough forest management. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, but when I was a kid, we had half as many people, still had the same number of forests, and still did not go through fire seasons like this. Just the way it is. The fact is, global warming is real. And people like you, my young Maga, oh, not young, I guess he's getting up to retirement age like me, are the problem, not the solution. So get your head out of your frickin' ass and realize there's a real world out there. The rest of the world can pull off things like universal health care and still maintain even higher standards than the US, which incidentally, what you were telling me is totally wrong. I actually did some quick research on health outcomes in Oregon and discovered painfully that it's only the top tier of people who actually are receiving adequate care in adequate time. And the lifespan in Oregon is still 5 years lower than it is in Canada's average. Just so you know, Canadians live longer. Canadians live longer than almost all of the Americans, except for those who are in Senate and Congress, which seem to last for frickin' ever. Mitch McConnell, where the heck are you? Now, this is the last thing I really want to say about this. There is absolutely no way I would ever be able to change that man's mind about anything, because it's a closed book. He honestly believes that our unemployment rate, which right now is actually one of the lowest it's been in about a decade, is so high because there's a bunch of people who just don't want to work and we give everything for free. Now, I pointed out a simple fact that the average single person in British Columbia who is on social assistance has to try and live on less than $700 a month, including their shelter costs. You cannot even rent a closet for $700 a month in the lower mainland. So, yes, we do have homeless problems. And it's not because of the addictions. Although addictions play a role, addictions are the net result of having to live on the street. We are, as a society, going to fix this while the Yankees sit there and twirl on their thumbs. We are going to continue to increase our builds of socialized housing. We are going to do our best to get those who need treatment into treatment. And most of all, we're not going to give up on our fellow Canadians.